Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going to be shedding some light on two very serious social crises in Japan that you almost never hear about.
That's right. We're talking about statelessness, which is called Mukokuseki, and the lack of household registration, or Mukoseki.
And these aren't just some, obscure bureaucratic terms.
Not at all. These are issues that functionally erase thousands of people, most of them are children. They get stripped of the most fundamental rights: school, healthcare, Social Security.
Even though they were born and raised right there in Japan.
We're going to trace how this happens through legal history and some really devastating real-life examples from our sources.
And we're going to start with an artist you might actually know, the pianist Fujiko Hemming. She's famous for getting this huge international acclaim, but really late in life.
Yeah, after she was 68. But what most people don't realize is that her entire youth, her whole career, was basically held back by this exact issue of statelessness.
Her story is really the perfect entry point. It shows how these, restrictive legal rules can completely shape or even break a person's life.
So she was born in Berlin. Her father was Swedish and her mother was Japanese. She was incredibly gifted, a real prodigy. But when she tried to follow her dream of studying in Europe, she just hit a brick wall.
And that wall was immediate and just life-altering. Our sources show she was flat out denied a passport.
Right. She literally could not leave Japan to build her career. She had no country that would claim her.
So what was the legal reason for that?
Well, if you look back at the law during that time, you find the root of the problem: Japan's nationality law. It strictly followed what's known as the paternal principle.
So the paternal principle.
Exactly, and that meant citizenship could only be acquired if the father was Japanese.
So even though her mother was Japanese, she couldn't pass on her citizenship to her own daughter.
Nope. And you have to remember, this is post-World War II. Paperwork was a nightmare. So if her father's country, Sweden, didn't automatically grant her citizenship, she just fell through the cracks.
Into this devastating legal void.
Precisely. That one patrilineal rule, that your legal identity comes only from your father, that was the single thing that stopped her from pursuing her career when she was young. I mean, think about that.
All that talent, all that potential just bottled up because of an arbitrary rule based on gender. It's staggering.
It is. She did eventually find a way out. She got Swedish nationality, but as a refugee in Germany, and then later British nationality. That's what finally let her live and work in Europe.
And the law in Japan eventually changed.
It did, but not until 1984. That's when they finally revised the law, allowing Japanese mothers to pass on their nationality. If Fujiko Hemming had been born after that, this whole struggle would have been avoided.
That's a huge point, but just because they fixed that one part of the law, it didn't make statelessness go away.
No, not at all. The sources show the problem just sort of shifted. It cast a shadow over a whole new group of children who were born in the 1980s.
Right, the children of Japanese men and foreign women.
Exactly. This is when you start hearing the term Jappayuki-san. Many of these children still ended up stateless because the Japanese father would often refuse to legally recognize them.
Let's just pause on that term, Jappayuki-san. It has a pretty interesting history, doesn't it?
It does. It's a direct echo of an older term, Kaori-yuki-san, that referred to Japanese women in the late 19th century who had to go overseas for work because Japan was so poor. They were earning foreign currency.
So Kaori-yuki-san was Japanese women going out when the country was poor, and Jappayuki-san was foreign women coming in when the country was wealthy.
And now, with the yen being so weak, we're actually seeing reports of that movement reversing again. Some Japanese women are seeking high-paying work overseas and even getting into trouble at airports in the West.
It just shows how these economic tides are so tied to these issues of migration and identity.
Absolutely. But if we bring it back to the stateless children today, the sources really highlight this massive accountability gap. The foreign mothers, they struggle with the bureaucracy, the language barrier.
Well, the responsibility of the Japanese father just seems to evaporate.
It's rarely enforced. The system lets the father just walk away. And that lack of paternal responsibility leads us straight into our second big topic, the crisis of missing household registration. The Mukoseki children.
Okay, so if Mukoseki is lacking a country, Mukoseki is lacking an identity inside the country.
You've got it. You exist physically, but legally. You're invisible. For a child, that's catastrophic. No school, no health insurance, nothing.
So why on earth would a child not be registered? Our sources point to two main reasons, and they're both rooted in these really outdated laws.
The first one is mothers fleeing domestic violence, DV.
They deliberately don't register the child.
They withhold the details, yeah. Because the family registry system, the Mukoseki, can be public information. An abuser could potentially use it to track them down.
So for these mothers, the risk of being found
Is greater than the benefit of getting their child formally into the system. It's an impossible choice.
And the second cause, it takes us right back to those antiquated legal structures you mentioned.
It does. It has to do with children born during the legal waiting period for remarriage, which used to be within 300 days of a divorce.
What was the rule there?
Under that old system, if a child was born in that window, paternity was automatically assigned to the ex-husband, no matter who the biological father was.
Wow. So to avoid that legal mess.
Some mothers would just not register the birth at all, and boom, you have a Mukoseki child.
This all seems to circle back to the Japanese koseki system itself, the household registration, and it's so much more than a birth certificate.
Oh, absolutely. The Koseki has always been built on this fierce patrilineal principle, the fukeishugi. The child belongs to the father's family register. Identity flows through the male line.
And this is where the hypocrisy of the whole thing just becomes crystal clear, according to the sources.
It really is. Look at what happens after a divorce. In 86% of cases, custody goes to the mother.
86%.
Right. But legally, the child often stays on the father's koseki, his family registry. And now, here's the statistic that just floors me every time.
I'm ready.
Less than 20% of Japanese fathers pay continuous child support after a divorce.
Wait, less than 20%.
It's cited as the lowest rate among all OECD countries. So you have a legal system that ties a child's identity to their father's name.
While the mother is doing 86% of the actual raising, and the father isn't even contributing financially in most cases.
The legal structure and the social reality are just completely at odds. It's a system that guarantees the father's legal status over the child, but does almost nothing to enforce his responsibility to that child.
I mean, some of this has changed though, right?
Yes, thankfully. The remarriage prohibition period was finally abolished recently, but you could argue it was obsolete anyway. We have DNA testing now. The whole rule was based on not knowing who the father was, and that uncertainty is gone.
And yet, Japan is still estimated to have over 10,000 people without a koseki, even though there are legal ways to fix it through family court.
The process is complicated, and many marginalized parents just don't know it's an option. And when the system is failing that many people, you can't just blame the parents anymore.
Which brings us to probably the most visceral example of the human cost here. The film Nobody Knows.
Directed by Hirokazu Koreeda. It's based on the real Tsunami child abandonment case, and it is just a masterclass in quiet devastation.
So in the real case, and in the film, you have a mother with multiple children from different fathers.
And crucially, none of them are registered. They're all Mukoseki. Because they're invisible to the state, they're kept totally isolated. No school, no doctors. They basically never leave the apartment.
And the film follows the oldest son as he tries to hold things together after his mother leaves them.
It's not a big dramatic movie. It's this slow, grinding portrait of their lives just falling apart from the neglect and from a society that is completely indifferent to them.
It's such a powerful look at how being unregistered just erases you from the social contract.
It is. The film got huge international acclaim. The lead actor, Yagura Yuya, won Best Actor at the Cannes Film Festival. He was only 14 years old.
But the real-life story, the aftermath of that case, is maybe even more compelling. The oldest son, who could barely write his own name at first.
He eventually started a business, went to university, and even worked for a listed company.
Which just proves the incredible potential that was being suppressed by the system.
But the tragedy is that his younger sisters, after being in foster care, they were returned to the mother. And after that, they just disappeared. They went missing.
It underscores this failure in Japan to protect children once they've fallen out of that traditional family unit.
So let's tie these two threads together. We have Statelessness with Fujiko Hemming, and we have the horror of missing registration with Nobody Knows.
And both problems are just so deeply rooted in this rigid patrilineal koseki system.
That's the core of it. Whether it's Mukokuseki or Mukoseki, at the end of the day, it's a fundamental violation of human rights. These are kids being denied an education, denied health care because of paperwork.
And in Japan, the problem often gets framed as just a personal failing of the parents.
Right, or an administrative gap. There isn't enough recognition that this is a collective human rights issue, that society has to intervene, especially in a culture that can be, very distant when it comes to other people's problems.
So legal reform can't just be about the normal family.
It has to be about the kids who fall through the cracks. Every single child needs to be guaranteed a place in society, no matter who their parents are or what their registration status is.
That feels like a vital conclusion to draw from all this. We've seen how the old paternal principle created a stateless artist, how the Mukoseki crisis was laid bare by that case behind Nobino's, and this profound contradiction in the system.
The gap between the legal theory and the reality of family life is just immense.
And thinking about that gap, where the law ties a child to a parent who isn't contributing, we have to leave you with a final question to think about. What kind of systemic changes would it take to truly give a child agency, to allow a child to legally say no to a parent who is failing them and choose to be registered with the parent who is actually raising them?
How can we move past these outdated traditions to make sure every single child is counted and respected and protected?
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.
We'll see you next time.